Mabiki, a cruel choice for survival in Japan history. Today, I'd like to discuss a subject from Japan's past that is both deeply shocking and forces us to confront a fundamental question about human survival: the practice of Mabiki. The word Mabiki originally referred to the agricultural act of thinning out rice seedlings. However, in the rural society of Japan's past, it became a metaphor for reducing the number of newborns, literally thinning out children. When there were too many mouths to feed, or if a child was born female, ending that life was seen as a choice for survival. While unthinkable today, at the time, it was considered one of the available options for struggling families. Around the world, there are customs so difficult to imagine and understand that they shock us even now. Even in countries familiar to us like Japan or China, such traditions existed. In China, the Cultural Revolution erased many traces of these customs, but in Japan, surprisingly vivid records still remain. The practice of Mabiki is one of the cruel customs Japan wished to conceal from the world. The main reason it remains little known is because Japan deliberately tried to cover it up. But what exactly was Mabiki, and why was it hidden so desperately? The story takes us back several centuries. After the blood-soaked Sengoku period ended, Japan entered the Edo era, a time recorded as the most prosperous before the 20th century. The market economy flourished and the quality of life greatly improved, compared to the chaos of the Warring States era. With fewer wars and a more stable society, the population steadily increased. The environment made it easy to develop hot springs, which helped spread bathing culture, improving hygiene and dramatically reducing deaths from infection. However, by the mid-Edo period, something unusual happened. The population stopped growing. To understand why, we must first look more closely at the culture of the time. The Edo-era class system was notorious for being stricter and more brutal than almost anywhere else. The ruling classes, such as samurai and Shinto priests, treated merchants and farmers as if they were personal property. They could beat them or insult them without consequence, and even killing them brought no guilt. Peasants were not regarded as equal human beings. Random killings like tsujigiri, where samurai would test their swords by cutting down passing strangers, show how rampant violence was. Beneath the surface of prosperity lay corruption and oppression. Harsh taxes led to constant peasant uprisings. As in many rapidly developing eras, there was a huge divide, not just between rich and poor, but between entire classes. The lower classes of Edo Japan were treated like livestock. Roads were poor, yet they paid higher taxes than their rulers. Even after a hard harvest, the bulk went to tax collectors, leaving nothing to survive on. Although the Edo period was one of Japan's most prosperous times, 70% of the population, the farmers, were starving to death. To make matters worse, repeated poor harvests brought great famines, and life for peasants became unbearable. In this harsh reality, the practice of Mabiki emerged. Historian Fabian Drixler analyzed Edo society and explained that, at the time, a newborn was not yet considered a full human being, and some could be sacrificed to ensure the survival of their siblings. In rural Eastern Japan, this idea was at the center of social debate and appeared frequently in records. This was not merely a matter of personal morality. The peasantry lived under crushing poverty and class oppression. Unbearable taxes and recurring famines pushed families into desperate situations, while outwardly it seemed like public health improvements and population growth meant a better quality of life. Deep economic inequality persisted. As a result, some parents made the extreme choice to give up certain children. Infants took years to become productive laborers and were sometimes viewed as mouths the family could not afford to feed. Cultural factors also played a role. In some regions, newborns were not considered fully human until Yamari, a shrine visit about a month after birth. Until then, the child was not socially recognized, making it psychologically easier for parents to let go. Drixler points out that the metaphor and justification of thinning out spread widely. Woodblock prints, illustrations, and documents of the era show heated debates on the subject, with perspectives varying by region and class. So how common was it? Earlier research estimated under 2% of births, but Drixler, using long-term data, suggested that in certain times and places, the combined rate of abortion and infanticide could reach up to 40%. This varied greatly depending on era and location. By the 1790s, the government took action, introducing pregnancy registration, offering child-rearing subsidies, and expanding moral education and surveillance. By the mid-19th century, many women officially registered pregnancies, and the poor could receive state support. This led to a natural increase in population. However, Mabiki did not completely disappear. During the Meiji period, public attention waned, but statistical anomalies such as abnormal stillbirth rates continued into the 1910s. The practice only ended institutionally in 1949 when abortion became legal. Even today, popular media sometimes claim 40,000 babies died each year, but such numbers are often based on oral histories or folklore, not verified statistics. Drixler emphasizes that Mabiki was not random killing, but an act of selection. Parents evaluated babies based on size, appearance, or omens, deciding which child would live. The survivors became the chosen children, a literal execution of the thinning metaphor. Yet behind this choice lay deep emotional wounds. Mothers lived with guilt and trauma, and countless testimonies have been passed down. To address this grief, the Buddhist ritual Mizuko Kuyo emerged prayers to Jizo Bodhisattva for the souls of unborn or deceased infants. Since the 1970s, it has become a mourning rite for those who experienced miscarriage or abortion. Today, statues of Jizo wearing red bibs in Japanese temples stand as symbols of remembrance. Interestingly, Eastern Japan's demographic history shows a reverse population transition. The number of surviving children increased before birth rates dropped, contrary to the usual pattern, where falling death rates precede declining birth rates. From a modern perspective, Mabiki is clearly a human rights violation. But to truly understand why people made such choices, we must also understand the poverty, taxes, family structures, and cultural logic they faced. Over time, the word Mabiki faded, but its remnants remain in Japanese society, most notably in Ijime bullying. The term itself means to drive out from the group. This can be understood in two ways: filtering out people who do not fit in with the group, removing the so-called weak, those deemed below average in ability. The key concept here is filtering out. Mabiki also meant to thin out, no matter how it was softened with euphemisms. It was essentially the exclusion of those unable to contribute to society. Put simply, some were removed from society immediately after birth because they were deemed unnecessary. In this sense, Ijime and Mabiki share a disturbing similarity. Today we've explored the dark side of the Edo period through the lens of Mabiki. It's a stark reminder that humanity has harbored customs, both shocking and cruel. At the time, it might have been seen as a choice for survival. From today's perspective, it is a chilling part of history. Rituals of mourning and healing remind us not only to point out the wrongs of the past, but also to reconsider the choices we make today. The metaphors of thinning, responsibility, and choice ultimately ask the painful question: who should be allowed to survive? As institutions, welfare and cultural memory evolved, more survived, and mourning rituals took root. Facing the past is the first step to making more humane choices in the present. If you found today's content meaningful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching.